You picked up this book for a reason. An idea is waiting inside these pages. An idea that might just change everything. Your journey starts now. Welcome.
The Two-Speed Mind, Navigating Intuition and Deliberation in a Complex World. Chapter 1, A Tale of Two Systems, The Invisible Forces Shaping Your Mind. Imagine your mind isn't a single, unified entity, but rather a bustling metropolis with two distinct, yet constantly interacting, operating systems. One is a lightning-fast express train, hurtling through familiar landscapes. The other, a thoughtful, deliberate commuter, meticulously planning its route. Both are essential. Both are incredibly powerful. Yet their interaction, or sometimes their misalignment, dictates every decision you make, every judgment you form, and every belief you hold. From the trivial choice of breakfast cereal to the profound investment in a new venture, these invisible forces are ceaselessly at play. Consider a seemingly simple scenario. You're walking down a familiar street, perhaps lost in thought, and suddenly you hear the screech of tires. In that instant, before you even consciously register the sound, your body tenses, your head snaps towards the noise, and a surge of adrenaline courses through you. You didn't decide to react, it just happened. This immediate, automatic, and largely unconscious response is the work of what we will call System 1. Now imagine a different situation. You're presented with a complex financial report filled with dense data, charts, and projections. To understand it, you must concentrate, follow logical arguments, perform calculations, and weigh various factors. This requires effort. Your brow might furrow, your eyes might narrow, and you might even feel a slight tension in your muscles. This deliberate, effortful analysis is the domain of System 2. These are the two protagonists of our story. System 1, the intuitive, automatic, and emotional thinker, and System 2, the deliberate, effortful, and logical thinker. My longtime collaborator, Amos Tversky, and I spent decades unraveling the intricate dance between these two systems, revealing how they shape our perception of reality and often lead us to surprising, sometimes costly conclusions.
System 1 is the older, more ancient part of our cognitive architecture. It operates automatically and quickly, with little or no effort and no sense of voluntary control. It's the part of your mind that enables you to read words on a billboard, instantly recognize a friend's face in a crowd, answer 2 + 2 without thinking, or duck when a ball is thrown at you. It is responsible for gut feelings, rapid associations, and the ability to find coherence and meaning even from sparse information. System 1 is constantly active, generating impressions, intuitions, intentions, and feelings for System 2. If endorsed by System 2, these impressions and intuitions turn into beliefs, and impulses turn into voluntary actions. System 2, on the other hand, allocates attention to the effortful mental activities that demand it. It's involved in complex computations, making difficult choices, focusing on a particular conversation in a noisy room, or comparing two sets of data. The operations of System 2 are often associated with the subjective experience of agency, choice, and concentration. You know you are activating System 2 when you feel mentally taxed, when your pupils dilate, and when you consciously direct your attention. Think of solving a complex algebra problem, filling out a tax form, or checking the validity of a logical argument. These tasks feel like work. The crucial, often overlooked reality is that while we tend to believe System 2 is in charge, rationally guiding our decisions, System 1 does most of the heavy lifting. It's the tireless workhorse, tirelessly churning out suggestions, impulses, and narratives. System 2, our conscious, rational self, often acts as an approving editor rather than an independent author. It's often quite lazy, preferring to accept System 1's plausible suggestions with minimal effort, rather than engaging in the demanding work of critical scrutiny. This lazy System 2 is a recurring theme in our exploration. Why does understanding these two systems matter? The practical implications are immense, touching nearly every facet of human experience. Consider personal finance. Why do we chase hot stocks despite overwhelming evidence of their randomness? In business strategy, why do executives proceed with risky ventures based on a charismatic leader's gut feeling, ignoring disconfirming data? In politics, why are we so susceptible to emotionally
Charged rhetoric, even when facts suggest otherwise? In medicine, why do both doctors and patients sometimes place undue trust in intuitive diagnoses, overlooking statistical probabilities? The costs of not understanding how our two-speed mind operates are staggering. They manifest in costly financial decisions, failed projects, misjudged risks, intractable conflicts, and a pervasive overconfidence in our own judgments. This book is not merely an academic exercise. It is an essential guide for anyone wishing to make more informed choices, avoid predictable pitfalls, and gain a clearer understanding of themselves and others. This book offers a systematic exploration of these two systems. We will delve into System 1's remarkable capabilities, its incredible speed, and its automatic associations. But critically, we will also expose its systematic biases, the predictable errors in judgment it makes. We will then examine the role of System 2, its limited capacity, its susceptibility to depletion, and its vital, yet often neglected role in critical thinking and self-control. Through a series of thought experiments, psychological studies, and real-world examples, you will be invited to observe these cognitive mechanisms at work within your own mind. You will become a cognitive detective, armed with the insights necessary to recognize when your quick intuitions might be leading you astray, and when it's imperative to engage your slower, more deliberate thinking. Our journey will begin by dissecting the fascinating, sometimes alarming mechanics of System 1, revealing how it effortlessly shapes your reality without your conscious awareness. Then, we will explore the often lazy supervisor that is System 2, understanding its limitations and its power. We will encounter a host of cognitive biases, the systematic errors in judgment that arise from these systems, from the availability heuristic that makes vivid events seem more probable, to the anchoring effect that subtly sways our negotiations. We'll explore the pervasive illusion of understanding, our overconfidence in our own predictions, and the profound impact of how information is framed. Finally, we will synthesize these insights, offering practical tools and strategies to help you navigate the complexities of decision-making in a world that constantly demands both speed and wisdom.
Prepare to look at your own mind with new eyes. Be ready to question intuitions you once trusted implicitly. This exploration promises to be both intellectually stimulating and deeply practical, empowering you to make better choices, understand your judgments, and ultimately gain a greater mastery over your own two-speed mind. Let's begin by pulling back the curtain on the silent, automatic operations that govern so much of what you think and do. Excellent. I'm glad Chapter 1 resonated. Here are the next 4 chapters, Chapters 2, 3, 4, and 5, continuing our exploration into the fascinating world of the two-speed mind, each aiming for approximately 1,800 words and maintaining the established style. Chapter 2, The Workings of System 1, your intuitive, automatic, and emotional engine that does most of the heavy lifting in our minds. Now, let's delve deeper into its remarkable capabilities, understanding just how effortlessly and efficiently it shapes our perception and reactions. This system operates beneath the surface of conscious thought,
making lightning judgments that often feel like spontaneous insights or undeniable truths. System 1 is a master of automaticity. Think about all the things you do without conscious effort: reading words on a page in your native language, recognizing a slightly familiar face, understanding a simple sentence, answering, "What color is a stop sign?" The answers arrive instantly, unbidden, and without any sense of voluntary effort. This incredible efficiency is precisely why System 1 is so invaluable. It frees up System 2, our more effortful and resource-intensive system, for tasks that truly demand deep thought. Without System 1, every moment of your life would be an exhausting cognitive burden. One of System 1's core functions is to create a coherent story from the information it receives. It's an associative machine, constantly linking ideas, memories, emotions, and sensations. When you hear the word banana, your mind doesn't just process the letters, it instantly activates a network of related concepts: yellow, fruit, sweet, monkeys. You might even unconsciously salivate slightly. These associations are not logical deductions. They are automatic activations that build a rich, interconnected web of understanding, or what System 1 perceives as understanding. This associative power is also closely tied to what we call cognitive ease or fluency. Information that is presented clearly, is familiar, or is easy to process feels inherently more trustworthy and true. If I show you a statement in a crisp, dark font, you're more likely to believe it than if I show you the same statement in a faded, hard-to-read font. Why? Because System 1 equates ease of processing with truth. Advertisers exploit this constantly. Repetition, simple language, and clear visuals make a message feel more comfortable, more familiar, and thus more believable, irrespective of its actual veracity. This intuitive sense of truthiness is a powerful force, often sidestepping System 2's critical faculties. System 1 also excels at priming. This is the phenomenon where exposure to one stimulus influences a response to a subsequent stimulus, without conscious guidance or intention. Classic experiments demonstrate this beautifully. For instance, if you are subtly exposed to words associated with the elderly, Florida, bingo, ancient, you might unconsciously walk slower after the experiment, simply because your System 1 was primed with concepts of old age. Or, if you read words related to money, you might become more self-reliant and less helpful to others. These are not conscious decisions. They are automatic behavioral responses triggered by an unacknowledged prime. This suggests that much of our behavior is subtly influenced by environmental cues we're not even aware of. Another critical feature of System 1 is captured by the acronym "What you see is all there is." System 1 operates on the principle that the information it has at hand is the only information that matters. It constructs the best possible story from the available evidence, no matter how sparse that evidence may be. It doesn't actively consider missing information or alternative explanations. This tendency to jump to conclusions, to build a coherent narrative without needing all the facts, is incredibly efficient. It allows us to make rapid decisions in an uncertain world. However, it also leads to a pervasive overconfidence and a remarkable blindness to our own ignorance. Because System 1 only processes what's...
Chapter 3. The Lazy Controller. When System 2 steps in and fails to. We've explored the extraordinary efficiency and intuitive power of System 1. Now, let's turn our attention to its counterpart, System 2, the deliberate, effortful, and logical thinking process. While System 1 operates like a well-oiled machine on autopilot, System 2 is the conscious controller, the thoughtful analyst, and the one we often believe is firmly at the helm of our decisions.
But as we'll discover, this controller can be surprisingly lazy, and its resources quite limited. System 2's operations are characterized by effort. Think of tasks that demand concentration, solving a complex math problem, or trying to recall a specific memory, or focusing on a particular voice in a noisy room. These activities require attention, and if you fail to give them sufficient attention, you'll perform poorly, or not at all. The subjective experience of System 2 is of agency, choice, and conscious direction. When you are engaging System 2, you feel like you are thinking hard. This feeling is not an illusion. System 2 processes truly consume mental energy. And here lies a crucial insight. System 2's resources are finite. Engaging in effortful cognitive tasks is mentally taxing, and this exertion can lead to ego depletion, a term coined by Roy Baumeister. Imagine your System 2 has a limited supply of willpower or cognitive energy for the day. If you spend that energy on one demanding task, say intensely focusing on a difficult report, or resisting the urge to check your phone, your ability to exert self-control or perform another effortful task later will be diminished. A classic experiment vividly illustrates this. Participants were asked to solve difficult puzzles that were actually impossible. One group was offered a bowl of radishes and another a bowl of fresh-baked cookies. The first group was told to eat only radishes and resist the cookies. The second group could eat cookies. After this initial task, both groups were given a second, challenging cognitive task. The group that had to resist the cookies gave up on the second task significantly faster than the group that had freely eaten cookies. Resisting temptation had depleted their System 2 resources, leaving them less willpower for subsequent mental effort. This suggests that tasks requiring self-control, resisting temptation, suppressing emotions, or making difficult choices draw from the same limited pool of mental energy as complex cognitive problems. System 2 is also heavily reliant on attention. When our attention is fully occupied by a demanding System 2 task, we become surprisingly blind to other stimuli. The famous invisible gorilla experiment perfectly demonstrates this. Participants watching a video of basketball players passing a ball often completely failed to notice a person in a gorilla suit walking through the game. Their System 2 was so focused on counting passes that it filtered out the utterly bizarre. This phenomenon, known as inattentional blindness, reveals a critical vulnerability. When System 2 is fully engaged, System 1 can still churn out impressions, but if System 2 isn't looking, it won't notice. The interaction between the two systems can sometimes lead to an internal conflict. System 1 generates an impulse, and System 2 struggles to control it. For instance, you might see a delicious piece of cake, System 1 impulse, but remember your diet, System 2 rule. The effort to override the impulse is a System 2 function. These conflicts highlight that System 2's role is not just about logic, but also about self-control. And this brings us to the core issue. System 2, despite its power, is often lazy. It prefers the path of least resistance. When System 1 offers a plausible, coherent, and quick answer, System 2 is prone to simply endorse it, rather than expending the effort to scrutinize it critically. It's like a busy manager who trusts their intuitive assistant's initial report without bothering to cross-check the figures unless absolutely necessary. This laziness becomes particularly dangerous when System 1's suggestions are systematically biased, leading to consistent errors. System 2's critical role is to detect errors made by System 1. It is the monitor, the skeptic, the one capable of asking, "Is this truly correct?" But for this error detection to happen, System 2 must be engaged. It must be sufficiently alert, motivated, and possess enough cognitive energy to overcome the intuitive appeal of System 1's suggestions.
When we are mentally depleted, distracted, or simply not paying attention, System 1's influence grows unchecked. Let's revisit a type of problem that highlights this dynamic. Exercise/thought experiment, the widget problem. If it takes 5 machines 5 minutes to make 5 widgets, how long would it take 100 machines to make 100 widgets? Again, your System 1 might have jumped to a quick, intuitive answer, perhaps 100 minutes. It sees the 100s and wants to match them. But let's engage System 2. If 5 machines make 5 widgets in 5 minutes, that means each machine makes 1 widget in 5 minutes. 5 widgets divided by 5 machines equals 1 widget per machine in 5 minutes. Therefore, 100 machines, each making 1 widget in 5 minutes, would still take only 5 minutes to make 100 widgets in total. 100 widgets divided by 100 machines equals 1 widget per machine in 5 minutes. The answer is 5 minutes. These problems are not designed to make you feel foolish. Instead, they illustrate a fundamental aspect of human cognition, the powerful allure of intuitive answers generated by System 1 and the consistent struggle for System 2 to override those plausible but incorrect suggestions. Our minds are built for efficiency, and often that efficiency comes at the cost of accuracy, especially when System 2 is too lazy or too depleted to do its job.
Understanding this interaction is key to cultivating more deliberate and rational decision-making, a challenge we will continue to explore in the chapters ahead. Chapter 4. The Associative Machine: How Your Mind Builds a Coherent and Often Flawed Story. System 1, our automatic intuitive engine, is not just a rapid processor, it is a tireless storyteller. Its primary directive is to make sense of the world, to build a coherent narrative from the endless stream of data it receives. This drive for coherence is so fundamental that System 1 will often invent connections, ignore contradictions, and leap to conclusions, all to maintain a compelling and readily understandable picture of reality. The mind, you see, unchecked. Let's revisit a type of problem that highlights this dynamic. Exercise, thought experiment, the widget problem. If it takes 5 machines 5 minutes to make 5 widgets, how long would it take 100 machines to make 100 widgets? Again, your System 1 might have jumped to a quick, intuitive answer, perhaps 100 minutes.
It sees the 100s and wants to match them. But let's engage System 2. If 5 machines make 5 widgets in 5 minutes, that means each machine makes 1 widget in 5 minutes. 5 widgets divided by 5 machines equals 1 widget per machine, 1 widget in 5 minutes. Therefore, 100 machines, each making 1 widget in 5 minutes, would still take only 5 minutes to make 100 widgets in total. 100 widgets divided by 100 machines equals 1 widget per machine in 5 minutes. The answer is 5 minutes. These problems are not designed to make you feel foolish. Instead, they illustrate a fundamental aspect of human cognition, the powerful allure of intuitive answers generated by System 1, and the consistent struggle for System 2 to override those plausible but incorrect suggestions. Our minds are built for efficiency, and often that efficiency comes at the cost of accuracy, especially when System 2 is too lazy or too depleted to do its job. Understanding this interaction is key to cultivating more deliberate and rational decision-making, a challenge we will continue to explore in the chapters ahead. Chapter 4. The Associative Machine: How Your Mind Builds a Coherent and Often Flawed Story. System 1, our automatic intuitive engine, is not just a rapid processor, it is a tireless storyteller. Its primary directive is to make sense of the world, to build a coherent narrative from the endless stream of data it receives. This drive for coherence is so fundamental that System 1 will often invent connections, ignore contradictions, and leap to conclusions, all to
Maintain a compelling and readily understandable picture of reality. The mind, you see, unchecked. Let's revisit a type of problem that highlights this dynamic. Exercise/thought experiment. The widget problem. If it takes 5 machines 5 minutes to make 5 widgets, how long would it take 100 machines to make 100 widgets? Again, your System 1 might have jumped to a quick intuitive answer, perhaps 100 minutes. It sees the 100s and wants to match them. But let's engage System 2. If 5 machines make 5 widgets in 5 minutes, that means each machine makes 1 widget in 5 minutes. 5 widgets divided by 5 machines equals 1 widget per machine in 5 minutes. Therefore, 100 machines, each making 1 widget in 5 minutes, would still take only 5 minutes to make 100 widgets in total. 100 widgets divided by 100 machines equals 1 widget per machine in 5 minutes. The answer is 5 minutes. These problems are not designed to make you feel foolish. Instead, they illustrate a fundamental aspect of human cognition. The powerful allure of intuitive answers generated by System 1, and the consistent struggle for System 2 to override those plausible but incorrect suggestions. Our minds are built for efficiency, and often that efficiency comes at
The cost of accuracy, especially when System 2 is too lazy or too depleted to do its job. Understanding this interaction is key to cultivating more deliberate and rational decision-making, a challenge we will continue to explore in the chapters ahead. Chapter 4. The Associative Machine: How Your Mind Builds a Coherent and Often Flawed Story. System 1, our automatic intuitive engine, is not just a rapid processor, it is a tireless storyteller. Its primary directive is to make sense of the world, to build a coherent narrative from the endless stream of data it receives. This drive for coherence is so fundamental that System 1 will often invent connections, ignore contradictions, and leap to conclusions, all to maintain a compelling and readily understandable picture of reality. The mind, you see, abhors a vacuum. Let's revisit a type of problem that highlights this dynamic. Exercise/thought experiment. The widget problem. If it takes 5 machines 5 minutes to make 5 widgets, how long would it take 100 machines to make 100 widgets?
Again, your System 1 might have jumped to a quick intuitive answer, perhaps 100 minutes. It sees the 100s and wants to match them. But let's engage System 2. If 5 machines make 5 widgets in 5 minutes, that means each machine makes 1 widget in 5 minutes. 5 widgets divided by 5 machines equals 1 widget per machine in 5 minutes. Therefore, 100 machines, each making 1 widget in 5 minutes, would still take only 5 minutes to make 100 widgets in total. 100 widgets divided by 100 machines equals 1 widget per machine in 5 minutes. The answer is 5 minutes. These problems are not designed to make you feel foolish. Instead, they illustrate a fundamental aspect of human cognition, the powerful allure of intuitive answers generated by System 1, and the consistent struggle for System 2 to override those plausible but incorrect suggestions. Our minds are built for efficiency, and often that efficiency comes at the cost of accuracy, especially when System 2 is too lazy or too depleted to do its job. Understanding this interaction is key to cultivating more deliberate and rational decision-making, a challenge we will continue to explore in the chapters ahead. Chapter 4. The Associative Machine: How Your Mind Builds a Coherent and Often Flawed Story. System 1, our automatic intuitive engine, is not just a rapid processor, it is a tireless storyteller. Its primary directive is to make sense of the world, to build a coherent narrative from the endless stream of data it receives. This drive for coherence is so fundamental that
System 1 will often invent connections, ignore contradictions, and leap to conclusions, all to maintain a compelling and readily understandable picture of reality. The mind, you see, abhors ambiguity and uncertainty. This profound drive for coherence manifests in several powerful ways. One is our tendency to infer causality even where none exists. When two events happen close together in time or space, System 1 instinctively links them as cause and effect. If the stock market falls sharply on the same day a politician makes a controversial speech, our System 1 immediately creates a causal link. The market fell because of that speech. Never mind that complex economic forces are usually at play or that many other events occurred that day. The coherent, simple story of cause and effect is far more satisfying and easier to grasp. This illusion of understanding makes the world seem more predictable than it truly is, fostering an unwarranted sense of control. Another potent example of System 1's coherence seeking is the halo effect. This bias describes how our overall impression of a person, company, or product, System 1's initial, often emotional judgment, influences our evaluations of their specific, unrelated traits. If you have a generally positive impression of someone, perhaps they're charming and attractive, your System 1 will automatically assume they are also intelligent, competent, and trustworthy, even if you have no direct evidence for these qualities. Similarly, a negative first impression can cast a shadow over all subsequent observations. Consider a simple experiment. Participants were asked to evaluate a person based on a list
Of adjectives. One group saw the list: intelligent, industrious, impulsive, critical, stubborn, envious. Another group saw the same list but with the positive adjectives first: envious, stubborn, critical, impulsive, industrious, intelligent. Even though the lists were identical in content, the first group formed a significantly more positive overall impression. Why? Because the initial positive adjectives created a halo through which the subsequent, less favorable traits were interpreted more benignly. The halo effect is particularly dangerous in hiring decisions, investment choices, and even forming opinions about public figures. It makes us incredibly susceptible to first impressions and can prevent us from seeing individuals or situations objectively. The halo effect is closely related to confirmation bias, which we touched on earlier but deserves a deeper dive. Once System 1 forms an initial belief or a coherent story, it actively seeks out and preferentially interprets information that confirms this belief, while simultaneously downplaying or ignoring evidence that contradicts it. It's not a malicious act. It's an automatic process designed to maintain coherence and reduce cognitive effort. If you believe a certain stock will perform well, your System 1 will make you more attuned to positive news about that company and less critical of negative reports. This creates a self-reinforcing loop, making it incredibly difficult to change our minds, even in the face of compelling counter-evidence. System 2, our rational controller, often becomes an advocate for System 1's initial belief, rather than an impartial judge. Overcoming these coherence-seeking tendencies requires a significant System 2 effort. It means consciously challenging your initial assumptions, actively seeking out disconfirming evidence, and deliberately considering alternative explanations. This is cognitively demanding and often emotionally uncomfortable, as it requires us to momentarily embrace uncertainty and challenge the comforting narrative System 1 is constructed. Another powerful illustration of System 1's influence on coherence is the framing effect. This refers to how the way information is presented, or framed, can profoundly alter our System 1's interpretation and subsequently influence System 2's judgment, even when the objective facts remain unchanged. Consider a medical treatment. Frame A. This treatment has a 90% survival rate. Frame B. This treatment has a 10% mortality rate. Objectively, these two statements convey the exact same statistical information. However, System 1 reacts very differently to the word survival, positive, hope-inducing, compared to mortality, negative, fear-inducing. People presented with frame A are significantly more likely to accept the treatment than those presented with frame B. System 1's immediate emotional association with the words dictates the perceived desirability of the outcome, biasing System 2's rational choice. This effect is not a sign of irrationality on an individual level, but a predictable consequence of how our intuitive system processes information. Exercise or thought experiment.
Imagine you're a medical doctor facing a dilemma. A rare disease is expected to kill 600 people. You have two alternative programs to combat the disease. Assume that the exact scientific estimate of the consequences of the programs are as follows. Program A. If Program A is adopted, 200 people will be saved. Program B. If Program B is adopted, there is a 1/3 probability that 600 people will be saved and a 2/3 probability that no people will be saved. Which program would you choose? Well, most people choose Program A. It's a certain gain, and System 1 prefers certainty, especially when lives are at stake. Now consider the same problem, but with a different frame. Program C. If Program C is adopted, 400 people will die. Program D. If Program D is adopted, there is a 1/3 probability that no one will die and a 2/3 probability that 600 people will die. Which program would you choose now? In this scenario, most people choose Program D. Why? Programs A and C are identical. Saving 200 means 400 die. Programs B and D are identical. 1/3 chance of saving all 600, 2/3 chance of saving none. Yet the framing in terms of lives saved, gains, versus people will die, losses, completely flips our preference. System 1 pushes us towards certainty when faced with gains, saving lives, and towards risk-taking when faced with losses, people dying. This illustrates the profound and often manipulative power of framing. System 1's relentless pursuit of coherence, its tendency to see causality, its susceptibility to the halo effect, and its responsiveness to framing are not weaknesses to be condemned, but rather powerful mechanisms to be understood. They represent the mind's efficient way of making sense of a complex world. However, by understanding these mechanisms, we gain the crucial ability to pause, question the story System 1 is telling us, and engage System 2 for a more accurate, less biased assessment of reality. This journey of understanding continues as we delve into the specific shortcuts and biases that System 1 employs. Chapter 5. Heuristics and Biases. Shortcuts to Costly Errors. System 1, our quick, intuitive thinker, is a master of efficiency. In a world brimming with uncertainty and incomplete information, it employs a toolkit of mental shortcuts, or heuristics, to make rapid judgments and decisions. These heuristics are often remarkably effective, allowing us to navigate complex social situations, recognize patterns, and respond quickly to threats without having to engage our slower, more effortful System 2. However, the very efficiency that makes heuristics so useful also makes them prone to systematic and predictable errors, which we call biases. These biases are not random mistakes, they are versus people will die, losses, completely flips our preference. System 1 pushes us towards certainty when faced with gains, saving lives, and towards risk-taking when faced with losses, people dying. This illustrates the profound and often manipulative power of framing.
System 1's relentless pursuit of coherence, its tendency to see causality, its susceptibility to the halo effect, and its responsiveness to framing are not weaknesses to be condemned, but rather powerful mechanisms to be understood. They represent the mind's efficient way of making sense of a complex world. However, by understanding these mechanisms, we gain the crucial ability to pause, question the story System 1 is telling us, and engage System 2 for a more accurate, less biased assessment of reality. This journey of understanding continues as we delve into the specific shortcuts and biases that System 1 employs. Chapter 5: Heuristics and Biases. Shortcuts to Costly Errors. System 1, our quick, intuitive thinker, is a master of efficiency. In a world brimming with uncertainty and incomplete information, it employs a toolkit of mental shortcuts, or heuristics, to make rapid judgments and decisions. These heuristics are often remarkably effective, allowing us to navigate complex social situations, recognize patterns, and respond quickly to threats without having to engage our slower, more effortful System 2. However, the very efficiency that makes heuristics so useful also makes them prone to systematic and predictable errors, which we call biases. These biases are not random mistakes, they are consistent deviations from rational judgment. Let's explore some of the most common and influential heuristics and the biases they produce. The availability heuristic. This heuristic suggests that we judge the frequency or probability of an event by the ease with which examples or instances come to mind. If something is easy to recall, System 1 assumes it must be common or likely. Bias. This leads to overestimating the likelihood of vivid, recent, or emotionally charged events. For example, after a highly publicized plane crash, many people overestimate the danger of flying, even though statistics show it's incredibly safe. Car accidents, far more common, receive less media attention and thus feel less available to our memory, leading us to underestimate their risk. Similarly, if you recently heard about a friend winning the lottery, your System 1 might briefly make you feel that winning is more likely than it actually is. The ease of recall, not objective frequency, biases our judgment. The anchoring effect. This is a fascinating and often insidious bias where an arbitrary initial number or piece of information, even if irrelevant, subtly influences subsequent judgments or estimations. System 1 latches on to the anchor, and System 2 struggles to move far enough away from it. Bias. Imagine you're negotiating the price of a car. If the seller starts with a very high initial asking price, the anchor, your subsequent counteroffers will likely be higher than if they had started with a lower price, even if you know their initial figure is outlandish. In an experiment, participants were asked to estimate the percentage of African countries in the UN. Before their estimate, a wheel of fortune, rigged to land on either 10 or 65, was spun. Those who saw the wheel land on 65 gave significantly higher estimates than those who saw it land on 10. The arbitrary number became an anchor, subtly skewing their System 1's initial assessment. The representativeness heuristic. This heuristic involves judging the probability of something by how much it resembles a stereotype or a prototype we hold in our minds, often to the neglect of other important information like base rates or conjunctions. Bias. The classic Linda problem illustrates this perfectly. Linda is 31 years old, single, outspoken, and very bright. She majored in philosophy. As a student, she was deeply concerned with issues of discrimination and social justice, and also participated in anti-nuclear demonstrations. Which is more probable? A. Linda is a bank teller. B. Linda is a bank teller and is active in the feminist movement. Most people intuitively choose B. Why? Because Linda represents our stereotype of a feminist. However, this violates a basic rule of probability.
The probability of two events occurring together, being a bank teller and a feminist, cannot be greater than the probability of just one of those events occurring, being a bank teller. System 1 ignores the statistical fact, base rate, that there are far more bank tellers than feminist bank tellers, and instead focuses on the coherence of the story, on how well Linda represents the feminist prototype. Regression to the mean. This is less of a heuristic and more of a statistical phenomenon that our System 1 consistently misinterprets. It's the observation that extreme performances, exceptionally good or exceptionally bad, are likely to be followed by more average performances. Bias. We often mistakenly attribute these statistical fluctuations to specific interventions. For instance, if a particularly harsh criticism follows an unusually poor performance and the performance improves, we might conclude that the criticism was effective. Conversely, if praise follows an unusually good performance and the performance subsequently declines, regresses to the mean, we might conclude that praise is detrimental. This leads to biased conclusions about the effectiveness of punishment versus reward. The reality is that extreme performances often have a large component of luck, which tends to average out over time. The illusion of understanding. System 1's drive for coherence, combined with the availability of compelling narratives, creates a powerful illusion that we understand the past and can predict the future with far greater certainty than is warranted. Bias. After an event occurs, a financial crisis, a political upset, a sports victory, we can easily construct a coherent, plausible story explaining why it had to happen. This is called the hindsight bias. I knew it all along, we tell ourselves, often genuinely believing it. This retrospective understanding, however, doesn't translate into predictive ability. The illusion that we understood the past leads to a false sense of confidence in our ability to predict the future, a topic we will delve deeper into in the next chapter. Exercise or thought experiment. Consider the following causes of death in the United States: death by shark attack, death by falling airplane parts. Which do you think causes more deaths per year? Your System 1 might immediately gravitate towards shark attacks. They are dramatic, vivid, and widely publicized in media and movies. They are available in our memory. However, deaths by falling airplane parts, while rare, actually claim more lives annually than shark attacks. The availability heuristic leads us astray because the drama of a shark attack makes it feel more probable, even when the objective statistics point elsewhere. These heuristics are not fundamentally flawed tools. They are quick and dirty solutions that usually work well enough in daily life. But when precision, accuracy, or critical thinking are required, their inherent biases can lead to significant and costly errors. Recognizing these shortcuts and their associated biases is the first step towards engaging System 2 to monitor, question, and when necessary, override System 1's intuitive but often flawed judgments. This understanding will be crucial as we explore the pervasive issue of overconfidence. Chapter 6. Overconfidence, Our Perilous Trust in Intuition. We've explored System 1's powerful heuristics and the biases they spawn. Now, let's confront one of the most pervasive and dangerous byproducts of our intuitive system: overconfidence. We possess a remarkable, often unfounded trust in our own judgments, especially those that arise quickly and feel intuitively compelling. This overconfidence isn't just a character flaw. It's a systematic feature of human cognition, deeply rooted in how our two systems interact. Why do we place such deep faith in our gut feelings, even when objective evidence suggests they're unreliable? Part of the answer lies in System 1's coherence-seeking nature and the WYSAIT principle we discussed. When System 1 constructs a coherent story from the available information, it doesn't leave room for doubt about the information that isn't available. The story it builds feels complete and therefore trustworthy. This creates an illusion of validity. Our subjective feeling of confidence in a judgment is often entirely unrelated to its objective accuracy. We feel we know, even when we don't. Consider the field of financial forecasting. Experts in this domain often make bold predictions about stock markets, currency fluctuations, or economic growth. They speak with conviction and present compelling narratives. Yet decades of research have shown that the accuracy of these predictions, especially over the long term, is often no better than random chance. Their confidence comes from System 1's ability to construct a plausible story about why a particular outcome will happen. But this intuitive coherence does not translate to predictive power in complex, unpredictable environments. This brings us to a crucial distinction. When is intuition reliable, and when is it merely an illusion? My research, particularly with Gary Klein, identified the conditions under which expert intuition can be genuinely trustworthy. It thrives in regular environments with valid cues and where individuals have had opportunities to learn from repeated feedback. Reliable intuition. Think of a chess master instantly recognizing a winning move, a seasoned firefighter sensing danger in a burning building before anyone else, or a skilled surgeon making a split-second diagnostic call. In these domains, the environment provides consistent cues. Experts have experienced countless similar situations, and they receive immediate, clear feedback on the accuracy of their judgments. Over time, their System 1 becomes finely tuned, operating almost like a sophisticated pattern recognition machine. Unreliable intuition. Conversely, intuition is highly suspect in unpredictable environments with low validity cues, where feedback is delayed, ambiguous, or rare. The stock market, political forecasting, long-term business strategy, or even predicting relationship outcomes fall into this category. There are too many variables, too much randomness, and not enough consistent patterns for System 1 to learn reliable associations. In these domains, strong intuitive feelings are often just System 1 constructing a coherent story that has little to do with actual probability or future events. One of the most insidious manifestations of overconfidence is the planning fallacy. This is our systematic tendency to underestimate the time, costs, and risks of future actions, while simultaneously overestimating the benefits. We believe our own projects will be completed on time and within budget, even when we know that most similar projects failed to do so. Think of that home renovation project that inevitably costs more and takes longer than initially estimated, or the software development project that consistently misses its deadlines. The planning fallacy arises because when we plan, our System 1 constructs a best-case scenario, focusing on the steps required and the positive outcomes, while neglecting potential obstacles or past failures. System 2, caught in the grip of this optimistic narrative, fails to adequately consider base rates, the statistical likelihood of similar projects running into trouble. We treat each project as unique, rather than as an instance of a broader category with predictable failure rates. Compounding this is the optimistic bias, a pervasive human tendency to overestimate our own abilities and future success and underestimate our risks. We believe we are better drivers than average, less likely to get divorced than average, and more likely to live a long, healthy life. "It won't happen to me" is the silent mantra of the optimistic bias. This bias is a powerful motivator, fueling ambition and perseverance, but it can also lead to reckless risk-taking and a failure to prepare adequately for potential problems. So what can be done to combat this pervasive overconfidence? While difficult, there are strategies to engage System 2 and introduce a healthy dose of realistic skepticism. One powerful technique, which my collaborator Gary Klein developed, is the pre-mortem exercise. Exercise, thought experiment. The pre-mortem. Imagine you are at a critical juncture in a project, just before making a final decision. Instead of focusing on why the project will succeed, which is what System 1 naturally wants to do, gather your team and conduct the following thought experiment. Imagine we are 1 year into the future. The project has failed miserably. Our results are catastrophic. Now take 5 to 10 minutes, quietly, individually, to write down all the reasons you can think of for why the project failed. This simple exercise is incredibly effective for several reasons. Legitimizes doubt. It gives permission to voice concerns that might otherwise be suppressed by the group's optimistic consensus, driven by System 1's coherence and halo effect. It activates System 2. It forces people to actively search for potential problems and weaknesses, engaging their critical, analytical thinking. It broadens perspective. It helps uncover unforeseen obstacles, neglected information, and potential threats that the planning fallacy and optimistic bias typically obscure. Reduces hindsight bias. By imagining future failure, you make it less surprising if problems actually occur, allowing for better contingency planning. The pre-mortem is a prime example of how System 2 can be deliberately engaged to counteract System 1's confident but potentially misleading intuitions. While our intuitive engine is a marvel of efficiency, its inherent overconfidence demands the vigilant, albeit lazy, scrutiny of our analytical system. By understanding the conditions under which our intuitions are reliable, and by employing specific strategies to challenge our natural optimism, we can make decisions that are not just coherent, but truly robust and realistic.
Chapter 7. Choices, Values, and Frames. The Subtle Art of Decision-Making. Up until now, we've primarily explored how our two systems shape our judgments and beliefs. But judgments are often precursors to choices, the moment we commit to a particular course of action. And when it comes to choices, the influence of System 1, particularly its emotional responses and sensitivity to how information is presented, becomes strikingly clear. This is the realm of prospect theory, a framework Amos Tversky and I developed, which describes how individuals make choices under risk, often in ways that contradict classical economic models of rationality. Classical economics assumes that individuals are rational agents who evaluate options based on objective, expected utility. Prospect theory, however, shows that our choices are profoundly influenced by two key psychological principles: reference points and loss aversion. Reference points. Our evaluation of outcomes is not absolute. It's always relative to a reference point. An outcome is perceived as either a gain or a loss, relative to where we are now or where we expected to be. Receiving an unexpected bonus of $500 feels like a gain. Losing $500 unexpectedly feels like a loss. The subjective impact is not just about the final state of wealth, but the change from the reference point. Loss aversion. This is a powerful, deeply ingrained System 1 bias. Losses loom larger than gains. The pain of losing something is psychologically more potent than the pleasure of gaining an equivalent amount. Losing $100 hurts more than gaining $100 feels good. This asymmetry in our emotional response to gains and losses profoundly influences our decision-making, leading to irrational behavior. We are often willing to take greater risks to avoid a loss than we are to achieve a gain. Consider the endowment effect. We value things more highly simply because we own them. If you're given a coffee mug, you'll demand significantly more money to sell it than you would be willing to pay to buy the exact same mug if you didn't own it. The mug, once yours, becomes part of your reference point, and parting with it is perceived as a loss. This reference point dependency and loss aversion also explain the framing effect in choice architecture, which we briefly touched on earlier.
How a problem is described or framed can drastically alter our preferences, even if the underlying objective reality remains the same. System 1 reacts intuitively and emotionally to the framing, biasing System 2's eventual choice. Let's revisit the Asian disease problem from Chapter 4, but with a renewed focus on choice. Scenario 1. Gains frame. A disease is expected to kill 600 people. Program A, 200 people will be saved. Program B, there is a 33% probability that 600 people will be saved and a 67% probability that no people will be saved. When framed this way, most people, around 72%, choose Program A, the certain gain, demonstrating risk aversion in the domain of gains. Scenario 2. Losses frame. A disease is expected to kill 600 people. Program C, 400 people will die. Program D, there is a 33% probability that nobody will die and a 67% probability that 600 people will die. When framed this way, most people, around 78%, choose Program D, the risky option. Here, the certain outcome is a loss, 400 deaths, and people demonstrate risk-seeking behavior in the domain of losses to avoid the certain loss. Crucially, Program A and Program C are objectively identical. 200 saved out of 600 means 400 die. Program B and Program D are also objectively identical. Yet the choice flips based purely on whether the outcome is framed as a gain or a loss. System 1's emotional response to the framing dictates the direction of our risk preferences, illustrating that our choices are often not driven by pure rationality, but by how our intuitive system processes gains and losses relative to a reference point. This has profound implications in areas like negotiation and public policy. A negotiator might frame a concession as a loss to be avoided rather than a gain to be achieved to influence their counterpart. Policymakers can frame public health initiatives in terms of lives saved versus deaths avoided to garner different levels of support. Another significant bias in choice is the sunk cost fallacy. This occurs when we continue to invest resources, money, time, effort, in a failing endeavor simply because we have already invested heavily in it, even if a rational analysis suggests cutting our losses. System 1 struggles to let go of past investments, perceiving them as losses that would be wasted if we abandoned the project. This leads to throwing good money after bad, because the pain of acknowledging the sunk cost, a System 1 loss, feels greater than the potential future loss from continuing the doomed project. Exercise, thought experiment. The concert ticket. Imagine you have bought a $70 ticket to a concert. As you are about to leave, you discover you have lost the ticket. You are standing outside the venue, with the concert starting in minutes. Would you buy another $70 ticket to see the concert? Now, consider a different scenario. Imagine you're walking into the concert venue and realize you have lost a $70 bill from your wallet. You still have money to buy a ticket. Would you buy a $70 ticket to see the concert? In the first scenario, lost ticket, many people would choose not to buy a second ticket. Why? Because System 1 has already budgeted $70 for this concert, and buying another ticket feels like spending $140 for a single $70 experience, a doubled loss. The pain of that loss feels too great. In the second scenario, lost $70 bill, most people would buy the ticket. The $70 loss is treated as separate from the concert budget. The cost of the concert is still just $70. Objectively, in both cases, you are out $70 and must decide whether to spend another $70 to see the concert. The final economic outcome is identical. However, the framing of the initial loss, lost ticket versus lost cash, influences System 1's emotional accounting, leading to different choices. Understanding prospect theory, reference points, loss aversion, and framing effects is not about judging people as irrational. It's about recognizing the powerful, systematic ways our intuitive System 1 shapes our preferences and choices. By becoming aware of these biases, we can engage System 2 to pause, reframe the problem, consider the objective outcomes more dispassionately, and ultimately make decisions that are more aligned with our long-term interests rather than our immediate emotional reactions. Chapter 8. The Seduction of Stories. Why we prefer narrative over statistics. Our minds are wired for stories. From ancient myths to modern news cycles, narratives provide meaning, make sense of chaos, and allow us to connect with information on an emotional level. System 1, our associative engine, thrives on constructing coherent stories, even from sparse information, often preferring these compelling narratives over cold, hard statistics. This preference for narrative over data is a significant cognitive bias that profoundly influences our beliefs, our understanding of the world, and our decision-making. Think about how you typically consume information. Are you more moved by a detailed statistical report on poverty, or by the poignant story of a single child's struggle against it? For most of us, the individual story resonates far more deeply. This is because stories engage our System 1's emotional and associative circuits. They create vivid mental images, trigger empathy, and tap into our innate desire for cause and effect explanations. Statistics, on the other hand, often require the effortful abstract processing of System 2. This preference for narrative over statistics manifests in several critical ways. Ignoring base rates. We've already touched on this with the representativeness heuristic. When presented with a compelling story about an individual that fits a stereotype, System 1 will often ignore the statistical base rate, the overall probability of that individual belonging to a certain group. If you're told a shy, organized person enjoys detailed work, your System 1 might intuitively label them a librarian, even if there are statistically far more farmers than librarians. The story of the individual overshadows the population data. The law of small numbers. System 1 is not a good statistician. It tends to believe that a small sample from a population will closely resemble the population itself. This leads to dramatic conclusions drawn from insufficient data. If a small study shows a new drug has positive effects, we might be overly quick to celebrate it, ignoring the fact that small samples are prone to extreme results purely by chance. We attribute causality to an outcome that could simply be statistical noise. This is why many promising early research findings failed to replicate in larger studies. System 1 loves a neat, simple story from a few data points. The appeal of causality. As noted before, System 1 has a powerful need to see cause and effect. Stories provide clear causal links. X happened because of Y. This makes the world feel predictable and understandable. We create these causal narratives for past events, making them seem inevitable, hindsight bias, which then falsely boosts our confidence in predicting future events. We crave the satisfying why, even if the true explanation is complex, multifaceted, or purely random. The narrative fallacy. This refers to our tendency to construct and believe coherent stories about the past that make sense of randomness. We weave together isolated facts into an intuitive, seamless tapestry, making events seem more linear, predictable, and logical than they actually were. This helps us make sense of the past, but it also fosters a dangerous overconfidence in our ability to predict the future. A well-constructed narrative, even if it ignores crucial data or simplifies complex realities, is far more compelling to System 1 than a probabilistic account of uncertainty. This is evident in biographies, company histories, and market analyses that explain why things had to happen, implicitly suggesting the future is equally readable. Consider the role of narrative in the news. A personal story of a disaster victim, a vivid anecdote about a successful entrepreneur, or a compelling account of a political scandal will capture attention and evoke emotion far more effectively than a dry statistical report on the same topic. This is not necessarily a bad thing. Stories can inspire action and empathy. However, it becomes problematic when the compelling nature of the narrative leads us to ignore the broader statistical context, to generalize from a single case, or to believe an individual's success is solely due to their skill, rather than a combination of skill and luck. Exercise or thought experiment, the investment success. Imagine you read the story of a successful investor, Mr. Smith. His biography details his bold moves, his insightful market timing, and his unwavering confidence in difficult times. His narrative is compelling, suggesting that his extraordinary success is a direct result of his brilliant decisions. Now consider the vast number of other investors who made similar bold moves, similar market timings, and exhibited similar confidence, but whose stories never made it into biographies because they failed. Your System 1 is drawn to Mr. Smith's coherent success story. It creates a causal link between his actions and his outcome, reinforcing the idea that success is primarily about skill and foresight. What System 1 tends to ignore is the base rate of investor success and the immense role of luck in highly unpredictable markets. For every Mr. Smith, there might be hundreds or thousands of others who made similar choices but were simply unlucky. The narrative fallacy, coupled with survivorship bias, we only hear the stories of the successful, makes us overestimate the role of skill and underestimate randomness. To counteract this powerful bias, we must consciously engage System 2. This means asking for base rates. When presented with individual cases or compelling stories, ask yourself, what is the broader statistical context? What is the overall probability? Consider alternatives. Actively seek out alternative explanations, especially those involving chance or systemic factors, rather than just coherent causal narratives. Seeking disconfirming evidence. Challenge the story by asking what evidence might contradict it, or what other stories might be equally plausible if you had different information. Embracing uncertainty. Acknowledging that the world is often more random and less predictable than our System 1 wants us to believe. The seduction of stories is potent, but understanding this bias allows us to appreciate the power of narrative without being enslaved by it. By deliberately weighing compelling stories against robust statistical evidence, we can cultivate a more nuanced, more realistic, and ultimately more accurate understanding of the world, leading to more rational decisions.
Chapter 9. Understanding Happiness, the Experiencing Self versus the Remembering Self. Our journey through the two-speed mind has revealed how we make judgments and choices. Now, let's apply these insights to a concept that deeply motivates us all: happiness. This might seem like an abstract, subjective topic, but my research, particularly with David Schkata, uncovered a profound dualism within our experience of happiness, parallel to System 1 and System 2, the experiencing self and the remembering self. Understanding this distinction is crucial because these two selves have different interests, keep different accounts of well-being, and often lead us to make choices that do not necessarily maximize our overall happiness. The experiencing self. This self lives in the present moment. It's the one that feels the immediate pleasure of a warm bath, the pain of a toothache, the joy of a good meal, or the irritation of traffic. It registers moment-to-moment sensations, emotions, and thoughts. The experiencing self answers the question, "How am I feeling now?" Its well-being is measured by the quality of the current unfolding moment. It has no memory, it simply experiences. The total happiness of the experiencing self could theoretically be measured by summing up all the moments of pleasure and pain over a period of time. The remembering self, this self is the storyteller, the record keeper. It's the one that recalls past experiences, makes sense of them, and forms memories. The remembering self answers the question, "How was it on the whole?" It's the one that makes decisions for the future based on what it remembers about the past. Crucially, the remembering self does not sum up all the moments of an experience. Instead, it relies on two very specific biases. Peak-end rule. The remembering self disproportionately weighs the intensity of the peak, most extreme moment of an experience, and the intensity of the experience just before it ends. The duration of the experience often plays a surprisingly small role. Duration neglect. The length of an experience, how long it was pleasurable or painful, is largely ignored by the remembering self. Let's illustrate this with a startling experiment that highlights the conflict between these two selves. Participants were asked to hold their hand in painfully cold water. Condition A, hand in 14 degrees Celsius water for 60 seconds. Condition B, hand in 14 degrees Celsius water for 60 seconds, then immediately followed by another 30 seconds where the water temperature was raised slightly to a still uncomfortable 15 degrees Celsius. When asked which condition they would prefer to repeat, a significant majority chose condition B, even though it involved a longer period of discomfort. Why? Because the ending of condition B was slightly less painful, 15 degrees Celsius versus 14 degrees Celsius, even though the total duration of pain was 50% longer. The remembering self preferred the experience with the less awful end, completely neglecting the longer duration of discomfort endured by the experiencing self. This has profound implications for how we make choices about our lives. We often choose based on what our remembering self anticipates rather than what would maximize the well-being of our experiencing self. Vacations. We might choose a grand, highly Instagrammable vacation that we remember fondly with peak moments and a good ending, even if many of the actual experiences during the trip were stressful or mundane. The suffering of the experiencing self, for example, travel delays or jet lag, is largely forgotten by the remembering self, which instead creates a coherent, positive story. Careers. We might chase a prestigious career that we remember as successful, high peak achievements, even if the daily experience of that work is filled with stress, long hours, and little joy. The remembering self prioritizes milestones and achievements, while the experiencing self endures the daily grind. The remembering self is essentially System 1 at work, creating a coherent story, focusing on salient features, peaks and ends, and largely ignoring the overall duration. This bias can lead us to make choices that, when lived out by the experiencing self, lead to less aggregate happiness or more aggregate suffering. We sacrifice the actual experience for the sake of a good memory or a positive narrative. The focusing illusion. Related to this dualism is the focusing illusion, where nothing in life is as important as you think it is when you are thinking about it. When we contemplate the impact of a single factor on our happiness, like wealth, health, or marital status, our System 1 tends to exaggerate its importance, neglecting the myriad other aspects of life that contribute to daily well-being. For example, if you ask people in a cold climate how happy they are, and then ask people in a sunny climate, their happiness levels are often quite similar. But if you first ask them, "How's the weather?" and then ask about their happiness, the sunny climate group reports higher happiness. Why? because bringing weather to mind creates a focus, leading them to overestimate its impact on their overall happiness. This illusion suggests that our judgments about what will make us happy are often biased by what our remembering self focuses on. We tend to focus on things that are salient, measurable, or easy to recall, overlooking the subtle, continuous flow of everyday experiences that contribute far more to the experiencing self's well-being. Exercise, or thought experiment, the dissertation story. Think back to a challenging, prolonged project you completed, perhaps a lengthy report, a demanding course, or a complex home renovation. Recall the experience. What were the hardest parts, the most frustrating moments, the moments of pure mental grind? This is an attempt to access your experiencing self's account. Recall the memory. Now, think about how you typically remember that project. Is it the satisfaction of completion, the pride in achievement, the sense of relief? This is your remembering self story. Often we find a distinct difference. The experiencing self endured a long period of discomfort or effort. The remembering self, however, often distills it down to a few peak moments of struggle and, crucially, the triumphant feeling of completion. We tell ourselves it was tough, but it was worth it, largely based on the memory, not necessarily the aggregate experience. This discrepancy helps explain why we undertake such endeavors again. Understanding the distinction between the experiencing self and the remembering self doesn't mean we should disregard our memories or future aspirations. Rather, it equips us with a crucial lens to examine our choices. Are we making decisions that will truly enhance the quality of our moment-to-moment experience, or are we primarily optimizing for a good story to tell or a positive memory to recall, even if it comes at the cost of present moment well-being? By recognizing the biases of the remembering self, we can engage System 2 to consider the full spectrum of our happiness, not just the highlights.
Chapter 10. Making Better Decisions. Practical Tools for a Two-Speed World. We've journeyed deep into the intricate workings of the two-speed mind, uncovering System 1's powerful intuitions and pervasive biases, alongside System 2's essential but often lazy scrutiny. The aim of this exploration isn't to dismiss intuition entirely. System 1 is an indispensable part of our cognitive machinery, but rather to cultivate a more nuanced understanding of when to trust it and when to question it. The ultimate goal is to equip you with practical tools to make better decisions, both personally and professionally, in a world that constantly demands both speed and wisdom. The central message is not that you should always think slowly. That's impractical and exhausting. Instead, it's about learning to recognize the cues that suggest System 1 might be leading you astray, and developing the habits to engage System 2 precisely when it matters most. This is the art of cognitive hygiene. Here are some practical tools and strategies to navigate our two-speed world. Learn the language of bias. The first and crucial step is simply to become familiar with the biases we've discussed: confirmation bias, anchoring, availability, representativeness, optimism, sunk cost rule, peak end rule, and so on. Think of them as diagnostic terms. When you encounter a situation, ask yourself, could the anchoring effect be at play here? Or, am I falling prey to the planning fallacy? By labeling the bias, you activate System 2 and create a cognitive distance, allowing you to question the intuitive judgment. Simply recognizing the pattern can interrupt its automatic influence. Slow down when the stakes are high. System 2 is effortful, so reserve its full engagement for decisions with significant consequences. If you're choosing a brand of cereal, System 1 is perfectly adequate. But for major financial investments, hiring decisions, strategic planning, or critical personal choices, deliberately slow down. Create a process that forces System 2 engagement. Checklists ensure all relevant information is considered, mitigating WISATI. Deliberate pauses. Take a break, sleep on it, or step away from the immediate pressure. This allows System 2 to reset and reduce the influence of immediate emotional reactions. Seek outside perspective and disconfirming evidence. Our System 1 and System 2 are often complicit in building coherent, self-serving narratives. To truly challenge your own biases, you need an external perspective. Devil's advocate. Appoint someone, or even play the role yourself, to intentionally argue against your preferred solution. This forces you to consider alternative viewpoints and potential flaws. Challenge your assumptions. Actively seek out information or people who hold different views. Don't just consume news that confirms what you already believe. This is a deliberate System 2 effort to counteract confirmation bias. Use base rates, the outside view. Combat the illusion of uniqueness by actively seeking out relevant base rates or statistical information. When planning a project, don't just focus on your internal best-case scenario, the inside view. Instead, ask, how long do similar projects typically take? What is the failure rate for ventures like this? This outside view provides a more realistic anchor and helps to mitigate the planning fallacy and optimistic bias. Conduct a pre-mortem. As discussed in Chapter 6, the pre-mortem is an invaluable tool for anticipating potential failures. Before a major decision, imagine the project has failed spectacularly. Then work backward to identify all the plausible reasons for its demise. This legitimizes skepticism, uncovers blind spots, and allows for proactive risk mitigation. De-biasing language and framing. Be hyper-aware of how information is presented to you and how you present it to others. Reframe questions. If a question is posed in terms of lives saved, try reframing it in terms of lives lost to see if your preference shifts. This helps you identify and mitigate the framing effect. Focus on facts, not just stories. When evaluating a situation, consciously step back from a compelling anecdote and ask for the underlying statistics and evidence. What do the numbers say is a powerful question. Cultivate metacognition, or thinking about thinking. The core of this entire book is to make you more aware of your own cognitive processes. Regularly reflect on how you arrived at a judgment or decision, not just what the judgment or decision was. Why did I think that? What assumptions did System 1 make here? Was I influenced by an emotional reaction? This ongoing self-interrogation strengthens System 2's monitoring capabilities. Understand your personal biases. While many biases are universal, some individuals might be more susceptible to certain ones based on their experiences or personality. By observing your own decisions and their outcomes, you can start to identify patterns of personal bias. Are you always overly optimistic? Do you tend to anchor on the first number presented? Self-awareness is a powerful defense. The journey to making better decisions is not about eradicating System 1. That would be like trying to remove half of your brain. It's impossible and undesirable. System 1 is our efficient, intuitive, and often brilliant partner. The true wisdom lies in understanding its profound influence, recognizing its systematic errors, and developing the discipline to engage System 2 precisely when the situation demands it. This mastery of the two-speed mind is an ongoing endeavor. It requires conscious effort, continuous learning, and a willingness to challenge your most cherished beliefs and intuitions. But the rewards are immense: clearer judgment, more robust decisions, a deeper understanding of human behavior, and ultimately, a more rational and fulfilling engagement with the complex world around us. By applying these tools, you are not just making better choices, you are becoming a more discerning, more effective thinker. And in a world increasingly shaped by both fast and slow thinking, that is an invaluable skill indeed.